Hey there everyone, welcome back. So this is the Collage Art Technique Mixed Media series I'm doing here on the channel, and it's in the development of amazing, really cool pieces of larger artwork like these that I end up selling the originals and then doing digital prints out of. So I wanted to kind of walk through the process of doing these really beautiful, pieces of artwork. They are much larger, so they do require like collage and different layers, acrylic, oils, sometimes pastels, mark making, all kinds of interesting things. So on this last section, we started to evolve the background for a new painting, and this was what I ended up with in testing color, shapes, forms, and just how everything kind of went together. So I know it looks like a floral, and it is. I usually, if you look at my work, have some kind of flower in the background of these things. You might not realize it, but if you look really closely, a lot of these things have a flower and kind of like evolving in the back and kind of revolving in the back. And even if it gets distorted, that's where we start. So I'm going to pop this one up. This is one that I just recently did of my puppy Misty. This is Misty Gray. She's now 2 years old, but this was a picture of her that I took when she was a little puppy, and I really just wanted to capture as many amazing husky puppy images along the way as I could, and I'm so glad I took all of that video and stuff now because I needed it, right? Okay, so let's just tuck this under, and I'll show you kind of like backtrack a little bit on how I got to that space with Misty Gray's bigger piece. And this was, let's pop this up. So you have it up in the corner. So this was the final piece up there. And to get there, I had to start in my sketchbook, you know? I wish I had the pages. I don't even know what I did with them because I don't think I put them in here. But it's okay because I've done this a million times anyway. So one of the things that I did was, like always, I start with kind of listing some colors that I think will probably be the road to greatness in some of these pieces. And on this one, it was definitely Opera Rose, which is just a gorgeous color. I always have it in my palette. And it's just this really, really super bright pink. Now, that's good for a background if you're going to collage, but remember, this one will really it will lose it. So you might want to use something like Ronadite Genuine, or even like a Quin Rose or a Magenta, because this exact Opera Rose, even though it works in the sketchbook and it's good for print, but it's not good for your originals. You don't want to put this on your originals. It will just fade. But in any case, it was a bright pink. Another thing I love to use is Manganese Violet. And that's really pretty. This one is by Schminke, and it is just a gorgeous purple that has some really nice granulation, and it works really, really well in these type of things. Another thing I like to use is phthalo. So I believe the one I used was like a Heliocerulean by Schminke, which would also be close to like a phthalo turquoise. Well, phthalo turquoise is a little bit greener. The Heliocerulean gave me that beautiful blue, which also enhances into like the purples. And then we're going to go ahead and like probably pull in the magenta, because if I don't, we'll be sorry later. Where is it? Oh, no, that's not it. Here it is. Okay. So I got to pull in the magenta because the Opera Rose it really won't entirely cut it, you know? See how it's kind of close. It's got a little more moodiness to it. Okay, so there's our base colors to get a little more like inky darks. Sometimes I will add a bit of indigo. You can add black if you want to. Schmink Prussian is a nice one, but a lot of times, you know, this one is just really, really convenient for me. And this is the Winsor & Newton Indigo. Okay. These are my black liners. They're permanent black liners and they're amazing. Really, really amazing. Okay, so taking a square brush, I usually use a flat brush. I'm going to start, as usual, with the lighter colors first and evolving these things. So let's just grab some of our really bright, I just got it really dirty. Let's grab the really bright Opera Rose, and I'm just going to start, or pink, Opera Pink, is that it? I'm just going to start bringing it in. Also, you can do Rondite. So basically, it was kind of like just playing with shapes and forms in here to evolve the color palette. And you don't necessarily use this piece in the final. You can, but obviously this is way too small, right? So right now, it's just a matter of using the colors together. And it's not necessarily that I'm going to take watercolor and use that in my final piece. I might, but normally I'll just use the sketchbook as my guide of colors and how everything will just kind of fit together. And let me just get some of this into my thing here. And in doing that, what happens is I end up kind of understanding what colors are going to work together and how I got there. Does that make sense? And what this does, the big purpose of this, is I can't just sit down and come out with a great masterpiece. You kind of have to work your way through it. And if you don't work your way through these beautiful colors and these arrangements, you might never get there. Now, if you notice, there is like a yellow, which is like on this, it looks kind of like it looks like a dirty yellow, but it's actually gold watercolor. And I usually add that as a glaze over later. So don't let it throw you off. You're probably like, hey, there's a gold in there and it's not in here, but you can use it, but it would definitely bring on green if you start mixing it into your watercolor. So this is, it's really helpful for you to have some color theory too. Now I didn't wet my paper on this one just to keep it kind of like more blotchy. If you do wet your paper, what will ultimately happen is, you know, it's nice paper, it's watercolor, it's going to start melting together. So I kind of wanted to lay some color down and avoid getting the paper oversaturated from the beginning. So there's that beautiful pink, and that's the magenta by Schminke. So as you kind of go through, I had this kind of like texture underneath the puppy that I kind of just played in my sketchbook with the idea of having these dark pieces and then some bright pieces, you know, and that's ultimately how I came to that. So like I'm going backwards, of course, right now, but I think it's actually helpful maybe for you to see it backwards, because now you kind of see the final piece and you understand that like all of this mark making is what will get you there. You know what I mean? Like who would have ever thought to use indigo instead of black and then just use the side of a flat brush to kind of build out this, you know, this interesting shape that would sit underneath the puppy. And then I had some dark shadows going here underneath the dog, just to kind of like make her stand out. You know what I mean? So just kind of layering things over. And what it was is like, I remember distinctly everything was lighter. And then as I started working my piece, I later started to darken this up with layers right on the canvas. So this didn't actually happen until later, but I'm just kind of showing you how sometimes a really dramatic shift in tone really will make the subject stand out. You know what I mean? So if the puppy was right there, then it would give us this beautiful like area and form, you know, without doing this. And then I was just kind of like striking some in the distance backgrounds. You know how like when a background blurs and you just read it as like a shot of color? Well, that's basically what this particular background is. It's just kind of like blurring the vision and becoming a shot of color. And then sometimes I'll add texture, like you can literally, I don't know if it will work here, but you can literally take scrapers or, you know, different things and kind of scratch through. Now, that's not necessarily always going to work on watercolor, depending on how dry it is. But as you can see, I can kind of blur things out and just kind of dip it in my indigo and create these neat lines just using a sea sponge. It's a dry sea sponge. So how I would represent that on canvas, different ways. You have like, I actually have next to my canvas a big thing of mark making tools. And if you've ever gone to art school, they have all these nifty little names for things. It's mark making tools, basically. And all it is like different things like cards, little pieces of wood, like different kinds of spatulas, different kinds of things that would, you know, can help you make marks on stuff so that you can blur backgrounds like that. Like, see how neat and interesting the blur background is? It's pretty cool, right? Now, as far as this, same thing can happen here. We can start to smudge it out just a bit. But remember, wet watercolor, it will take over. It will go crazy. But just by like giving it a little texture with my sea sponge, I realized that like when I hit the canvas, oh yeah, you know what I mean? All things are possible. So this is mark making. To me, this is mark making, you know, in preparation for a background. Now, different things, like if you were working in, say you were going to do digital, right? You weren't going to go anywhere past this. You could actually scan this in using a printer or computer, get this into a digital form, and then just start working with it in layers and paint over it. You know, like you could do a digital painting over this, and that would give you another effect. So once you start just doing this, and this is what this series is all about, once you just start doing this, you're starting to like evolve something so much more special than just sitting down and trying to do a masterpiece right off the bat without like mapping out colors and thinking about, you know, what you should do next, right? So let's go ahead and just add some gold here just for fun. So I'm going to take my water. My water has tons of gold in it right now. It's so funny. It's like coming out on everything. So I'm just going to take this gold, and this is pretty thick, but that's okay because we really just want to wash it over this and see what it looks like. And as you can see, that's how I got that beautiful gold coloring. It's actually pieces of gold. So the original, which unfortunately I no longer have because somebody bought it. So it's already on its way to its new home. My little beautiful Misty, I wanted to keep her, but I'm going to have to make her another one because they really loved it. And it's always good. It's always good. I can't keep them all. That's the luxury, right? I can always make another. But at least I took pictures. So that's all that is. It's beautiful gold paint. Now you could also do a layer of gold paint or use actual 24 karat gold overlay is really pretty too. So as this dries, you can continue to add layers and try different things, try different textures. We can break out a stencil at this point in time. So in the last video from this series, I actually showed you these stencils. And this is a great time to break them out and just kind of show you something that they can do. So let's take this one because it's kind of smaller texture. So you take your sponge and you lay it over an area that you want to, get this texture. And then you just can use a toothbrush or you can use your sponge. And there you go. You're going to start getting these nice little things. Now it's better when it's dry because I'm really risking, getting some really smudgy results here, but let's just try it. My sponge is damp. It's not gonna, you don't want it sopping wet because otherwise it will smear. But can you see these really neat marks that it's starting to make now? This is what I love to use stencils for. I actually like to remove colors with stencils and show a layer underneath. Now when this dries, you can actually glaze over it and then you can have, that in another way. So for instance, if I remove some of the color here, right? And then I let it dry. So wipe this over so I don't get too many colors on it. I mean, this just really this moment in time is how I get so many cool ideas for things. I really do. So I'm going to take just a wash brush and a little bit of my, this is my Schminke Gold, which would be equivalent to a very light glaze. And then you can glaze over and you can see how you still now have that effect, but now I have this beautiful, just a glaze. Now, if this was on a big canvas, I would use an oil, which I just got some new oils that are water soluble. I brought these out in the last video and I can't wait to try them. They are literally water mixable oils. That's crazy, right? So that means I'm not going to have any really harsh smells or chemicals around my dogs, my little babies, because I don't want them to get hurt. So that would be a really great layer. Other things you could use, well, of course, if you stay with watercolor, you can use transparent watercolor. If you are going to canvas, then you can't really do the watercolor for long. You could maybe put watercolor on your watercolor paper and then adhere it to the canvas and then layer over that with acrylic or oil. So you have some options. You can always, use another piece and add collage it right on, which is what the series is all about, is taking these and just starting to layer things, But in any case, this is where it all starts. Here's another one started, and you can see the similarities between what I did here and what the finished result ends up being once you hit the canvas. But you have to be here first. Otherwise, you will spend literally a decade getting to something like this if you don't have an idea in your head and a combination of colors. All right, there you go. Okay, we're moving along. This is going to be a really fun series. So I hope you learned something today, and maybe I gave you some good ideas, maybe even just a starting point for what you can do moving forward and how you can use some of these really cool tools to start doing collages and just start mark making and evolving these paintings. We're going to keep going with this, so look out for the next video if depending on when you're watching this, because this is a whole series until we get to the end, which is the final piece. All right, bye guys. Happy painting.